Welcome to this new edition of BCR Webcasting. This edition will be about our forthcoming event, which is our 9th Alternative and Receivables Finance Forum, which will take place in London at the offices of Clifford Chance on the 28th and 29th of November. One of the sessions that we're going to be looking at that conference is on AI and the impact that AI may have on the receivables finance sector. Just looking at the content for that session, there's an awful lot that we're going to be covering in that sector. There's an awful lot going on and an awful lot of ideas as to how AI can potentially be used. So today I'm delighted to be joined by one of the panelists for that session, and that's Tim Armstrong. Tim is hello, Tim. Tim is head of Receivables Financing and Data Science at Birch Finance. Tim, this looks like a really interesting and really exciting area. And obviously, there's an awful lot of talk about AI generally at the moment, and our particular focus, of course, is how it might be potentially used within the receivables finance sector. Do you see huge potential for this within the sector?
So I see a lot of potential use for AI and machine learning techniques across the whole sector. Absolutely. If we just take a step back, the funding gap in the trade finance space runs into the many trillions, depending on who's counting. I don't think AI is going to have a massive impact on bridging that funding gap. I think that funding gap exists primarily because of the complexity that exists within the trade finance world. So we'll come back to that in a second later on in the conversation, I think. But that's the challenge we have to overcome in bridging that $1 trillion financing gap. However, in the financing that exists within the trade receivable space, AI and machine learning has a huge part to play, I think, and we talk about that all the time in the work that we do. So it's we're at the cusp of being able to do a lot more with fewer people.
Yeah. Just to drill down a little bit, where do you see it being used? Is it in terms of credit assessment, or where specifically do you think it might best be employed?
So if I talk from the perspective of Birch Finance, so we we buy about $1 billion worth of receivables per year. Generally speaking, these are very, very granular portfolios made up of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of corporates, or potentially as many as 1 million consumers in those portfolios. And in constructing our facilities and in executing our trades, we're looking at all of this data, or our data scientists are looking at all of this data. And what we're predominantly looking for are patterns within the data. We're trying to really predict from a portfolio of receivables that we buy, how much are we going to collect and when are we going to collect it, and how confident are we in those predictions. So AI has a massive role to play in helping us crawl through all of this data, all of this incredibly granular data, to identify those patterns and help us, put the facilities together that enable us to, really create refined pricing and accurate pricing for our clients and for us. And if we, that's probably the the most exciting
presumably, the more granular the data, the better AI will work and can be employed. But what about big ticket stuff? Does that mean it won't really work where you have, let's say, very large invoice values in the thousands or even greater?
So you can definitely use it in those circumstances. I think it's less applicable. If you think about the SME portfolios that we buy, which have got maybe 100,000 SMEs in the portfolio, we tend to look at anything up to 5 years of data. There can be monthly origination harvests within that data. So there, it's very hard with traditional techniques, pre-AI techniques, pre-machine learning techniques, to properly process that in something like Excel, which is what I grew up using. But now, with better AI techniques, you can identify a lot of very interesting patterns in that data that enable you to price a portfolio better, but also enable you to give real insights into how a corporate's business work that they possibly weren't aware of prior to you doing that analysis.
So presumably the potential for this is to improve efficiency, to be able to serve clients better, bring down costs, and for maybe people like you and companies like Silver Birch to give you a competitive advantage if you're going to be ahead of the others in terms of employing AI. Is that how you see it?
That's exactly how we see it. And if you think about, so what I focused on is kind of what I would call the exciting, interesting bit of the potential for AI. The bit that takes up most of the time of the data scientist is the data cleansing aspect of it. Once you've got the data, what do the columns mean? Where are the errors within the data? And I also see huge potential for AI in the data cleansing aspect of what we do, because that probably takes up 70 to 80% of the time of our data scientists before they get to the interesting bit, from my perspective, of analyzing that data and saying what it means. But if you haven't done the data cleansing well, then you can't have that much confidence in the analysis that comes out. So in both of those aspects of the role of the data scientist, AI will play a huge role from now and going forward. And what that allows me to do, exactly as you say, Michael, is do more with the same team of data scientists.
Mhm. And are there any concerns that, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about AI and dangers of AI
Yes.
generally in the last few months. Are there any particular areas that we need to be concerned about with AI going wrong, within its use in the receivables finance sector? I mean, obviously, data in, data out, that old adage,
Yeah.
obviously that's something that's been there all the time. But are there any particular concerns that we should have, do you think, about the future of use of AI within this sector?
So we have kind of two areas that we keep a sharp eye on from the perspective of our machine learning and AI tools at Silver Birch. One of them is just making sure that when we're looking for patterns and when we're developing patterns, that we really understand the grounding of the algorithms that come out of that, and what things that we look at depending on what the client can give us. We're looking at where the corporates are based, where the consumers are based, the credit score of the consumers, and we want to be very, very sure that there are no kind of discriminatory activities or behavior or elements to the algorithm. So we're not very comfortable with black boxes. We need to understand exactly what AI is doing and why it's doing it. So one risk is just not being sure, and AI doing something peculiar in the development of the algorithms that we then use. And the second area that we spend a lot of time focusing on, particularly because of what's gone on in the last 2 or 3 years in the world, is making sure that the data sets are as complete as possible, so that if we're making forecasts about what might happen in the future, everything that might happen is taken account of in the data set. And if we think of COVID rampaging around the country, a lot of the data sets we've analyzed for our clients didn't have COVID in. So when we were talking to our clients, when we were talking to auditors about the risks that we had identified in a portfolio, they quite rightly were saying, well, hey, COVID wasn't in the data, but is rampaging around my country now. What does that mean for the portfolio, and what does that mean for the performance?
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure with any AI developed tool or approach that everything's taken account of that might well happen, or we just always have a watching eye on what's going on and making sure that we adjust things as we go. We don't say, here, AI tell us what to do. It's a tool, part of the an overall suite of tools that we use to develop our propositions, our facilities, and support our clients ultimately.
Okay, and I guess that's the kind of advice you would give to a receivables financier who is just perhaps looking into this and thinking, where should I start, or what should I consider in terms of how to adopt AI within my business? Is there anything else that any other advice you might give to someone, say an alternative receivables financier or any receivables financier who's thinking about, how do I start to look at adopting AI?
I mean, I think it's all of the things that we've talked about. It's making
Mm.
sure that the data you feed in to the machine is good data, and the machine can obviously help you develop the data that you then analyze, and then just an awareness that you can't outsource risk. Um, make sure you understand what the machine has done, what AI has done, what it's telling you, what its assumptions are based on, and then take a view about what to do in the future.
Well, Tim, I think this is going to be a really exciting session, and thank
I'm
you for your
looking forward
time
to it.
today. And so am I. And uh, I think if you want to see more of Tim and have a greater understanding of where AI will fit into the receivables finance sector, do please join us on the 28th and 29th of November at the Alternative Receivables Finance Forum, which, as I mentioned, will be at Clifford Chance in London. Tim, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.